I believe that there are tests and things that get put in front of us, but it's on us as individuals to take that opportunity, to pursue that thing, to recognize what's going on. I believe in prayer. There's a comfort and hope in prayer, but I don't believe that prayer can solve all of your problems. As a human, you need action.
If we really look at what Buddhism is, it's not, I wouldn't consider it a religion. I always tell people that it's really more a way of life, because there is no prophet, there is no higher being that we are praying to. We don't believe in any particular person or individual or entity that determines our life, our future, anything like that. Everything that we do causes a reaction. So there's a cause and effect, which we term karma. Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area. Welcome back, everyone, to the Medico-Legal Brief here with Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik, where medicine meets law. If you haven't already, make sure you follow, subscribe on Spotify or YouTube or on most social media platforms, and we would love to interact with you, leave comments, ask any questions that you guys may have. Today's topic is a really interesting one. It's something that I've had a lot of curiosity about, especially when it comes to how we utilize this in medicine and law. And so I'm hoping that the conversation will be as enticing for you guys as it will be for us.
I'm excited for this conversation. It's very similar to our political episode, which if you haven't watched our political episode, go back a few episodes and give it a watch. But today we're talking about religion, right, Long?
That's right. Yeah. And so just flowing through the conversation will be, how did we come to pick or grow into our religion, and how much of it do we follow? And then how does it lead or guide our practice of medicine and law? And that is where I'm curious on how you see yourself potentially treating your clients differently or not differently, or in a certain specific way. Because I definitely see how my religion, which is Buddhism, reflects into the way I practice medicine.
A good place to start is, how did we get to the religions that we practice? So I'll start. I was raised Catholic. I'm still Catholic, although I would refer to myself as a cafeteria Catholic. I heard that term actually from one of my professors in law school, so I'm going to steal it. But as a cafeteria Catholic in, my adult age, I pick and choose what I believe out of Catholicism. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, and my mom being Hispanic, we were Roman Catholic, went to Catholic school when I was in Chicago, and did all my sacraments, had, every bit of Catholic experience when I was there. And then when we moved to Texas, there's not a lot of, I would say, Catholic churches in North Texas. If you get closer to the border, South Texas, San Antonio, you'll see a little bit more Catholicism practiced in that area. But up here, it's primarily Protestant. You have your Baptists, you have your Methodists, you have your non-denominationals. So being here, we had to kind of hunt out the only Catholic church in the area, and I continued to do Catholic studies there while going through the rest of what we call the sacraments through the course of high school and then into adulthood. So that's the quick and dirty history of my Catholicism.
So I know I want to give you my backstory too, but I'm actually curious, because this is where I don't have very much knowledge on, is what is the difference between Baptist, Protestant, Catholicism? Where does it fall under the umbrella? And what is Christianity then when it comes to differentiating all these different sects?
I'm going to do my best to answer that question. I'm not a theologist. I have not been into the religious history as some other people are. But, from my understanding, when you're looking at Christianity, you're looking at followers of Jesus Christ. So if you look at the historical, religions that have come out of the Middle East and have evolved, you're looking at Christianity, you're looking at Muslim or Islamic belief, and then you're also looking at Judaism, Jewish religion. So those are the three main ones. And from those, they share a lot of history. But when you're looking at Christianity specifically, you're looking at followers of Jesus Christ. And from there became the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is one of the biggest churches in the world. It's one of the biggest religions. But from my understanding, when you look at the Protestant sects, what ended up happening is King in England broke off from the Catholic Church, and he decided to make, I believe it was the Church of England. And then from there, he just didn't like being told what to do from the Catholic perspective, but he still wanted to practice Christianity. And I want to say it may have had something to do with he wanted to like divorce his wife, and Catholics don't believe in divorce. And so by him trying to divorce his wife, he didn't agree with the Catholic Church, so he decided to step away. And that's where the Protestant Christianity comes from. In my opinion, some people would disagree with me, but Christianity is this umbrella. Catholicism falls under Christianity. The Protestant, elements of it, when you're looking at Methodists, Baptists, Lutherans, they also fall under Christianity because you're believing in Jesus Christ. There are some instances and some belief systems in Christianity where they would say that Catholics would not fall under the umbrella as a Christian, but that lends itself to just different ways of practicing and believing. Then when we look at how it came over to the United States, you look at the Mayflower and, our European brethren, our British brethren coming over to colonize the United States and bringing those Protestant beliefs on over. But as you're looking at, the rest of the world being colonized, that's where a lot of the religion actually started spreading. When you look at, Italy and Spain, their roots are in, Catholicism. So that's where you get a lot of Catholicism coming up from Central and South America, because you're looking at all the big European players and how they've spread their religions across as they're colonizing and as they go through and try to convert other people, convert the indigenous, so on and so forth.
So I'm getting the understanding is that Christianity is the big umbrella, and then
Yeah.
there are certain sects that have broken off from the main branch, and then they're just new branches, and they
Yeah,
all believe
that's the best way to put it.
and they all believe slightly different things, but Jesus Christ is always that main foundation that is
Yes.
similar across all of them.
Yes. And the thing is, Jesus Christ plays a role in Islam and plays a role in Judaism. Like he is I hate to put it to the word character, but he is a character in the backstory of those religions as well. So they're all intertwined from a very historical standpoint. But, bringing it back to your initial question, it was some king didn't want to listen to the Catholic Church anymore, created one thing, and then out of that branch created other branches. And now you get a very section form of Christianity, where depending on where you're at and your community and the people who are around, you'll find different denominations all over the place.
So then again, we're probably digging really deep here, but the difference between Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, then is it where a different part of the story is more important, or a different prophet is more important in those different religions? Is that what distinguishes them? Or again, keeping it as
Yeah.
surface level as possible, because I understand we don't know everything about Judaism and Islam.
I definitely don't want to speak out of turn, but for Islam, I believe their prophet is the Prophet Muhammad. And Judaism, the prophet hasn't come yet. Jesus Christ is, in Christianity, our prophet. For Judaism, they're still waiting for that prophet to appear.
Got it. Well, then let's get into my backstory, which is Buddhism. Obviously, in my little circle, I know quite a few Buddhists because I grew up going to temple, had a community of Buddhism, and was able to learn a lot from my childhood. But the story for my family is that my parents came over to the US without any particular religion at all. And so my dad took that time to explore different religions, and he felt like Buddhism was the one that fit his life the most and that allowed him to pursue his goals, whether that was career or family and just life in general. And so that is what he ended up following, as well as what he passed down onto us. And so I started at a really young age. I started going to temple probably at 2, 3 years old. And just like Christianity, we have Sunday school. You go in, instead of Bible study, you're doing there's scripture in Buddhism as well. So we also do very similar parallel things as Christianity and as other religions as well, as we go in and we study those texts and learn from it and hopefully grow from it as well.
There is a difference between your traditional religions, like the three that we just talked about, and then Eastern religions or Eastern practices. So in the three religions that we just talked about, there's a prophet, there is a center figure that things revolve around, and there are also different individuals along that path. You have Jesus, you have Moses, you have the Prophet Muhammad, you have other individuals that play a role in telling that story. Is there something of that sort that's in Buddhism? Is there a central figure?
There is a central figure that a lot of Buddhists or people who hear of Buddhism will associate the religion with. But this is where, if we really look at what Buddhism is, it's not, I wouldn't consider it a religion. I always tell people that it's really more a way of life, because there is no prophet, there is no higher being that we are praying to. We don't believe in any particular person or individual or entity that determines our life, our future, anything like that. Everything that we do causes a reaction. So there's a cause and effect, in which we term karma. And so therefore there's an endless cycle of karma, because there's an endless cycle of actions, which then causes reactions. And so we do not believe that anyone can intervene in that cycle other than yourself. And so that is a very big difference for Buddhism versus every other religion out there. I can't speak to the other Eastern religions because I don't know them that well, but for Buddhism, because of how much I've studied it, I also know that the Western perspective of what Buddhism is sometimes a little hazy or not the most accurate either. I remember learning in school, like actual American school in social studies, and learning about Buddhism, and I was like, this is not really what we're taught at all in my Sunday schools. Sunday schools, we're diving deep into what Buddhism truly is. And so again, no prophets, no gods or entities, higher beings, but there are teachers or people who have reached enlightenment, is the way we call it. So enlightenment is that goal that we all want to obtain, which is, I don't want to say heaven, but it's more of, we call it Nirvana. It's a place that we call Nirvana. It's essentially like heaven, except it's not meant to be this place that gives you all this love or all that you've ever wanted. It's not about what you can have and what you can't have. It's more about being just neutral. And as we have this conversation, you'll understand more why I try to explain it that way, because a lot of people think that Buddhism is revolved around doing good deeds.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really go down to the scripture, that's not really the goal of what Buddhists are meant to do.
Yeah. With the three religions we were talking about, it goes to a place of you're seeking out that heaven. There's a little bit of that hell through, and I know that with Islam and Judaism it differs, but with Christianity you're looking for a heaven and hell, and it's like a place that you will go to. From my understanding with Buddhism, you're trying to achieve a state. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a state of tranquility, a state of just peace, a state of it's not good, it's not bad, it's just like being almost.
You said it much better than me. I'm actually impressed, Nick. But yes, that is exactly the way I was trying to explain it, is tranquility and neutrality. It's not about being good, it's not about being bad, but it's about being in the middle. So one of the main tenets or the main discussions in Buddhism is trying to walk that middle path.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets lost in translation, or maybe lost in Western translation. We don't really learn about that in our social studies or history classes. We learn more about karma, we learn about reincarnation, and that's what they believe. And so these other outlier things that we believe.
Yep.
Essentially, the idea is that life is this constant circle that we're cycling through. After we die, we recycle through, and the goal is to break out of that cycle. And the only way that we believe we can break out of that cycle is to be completely neutral, where you are not bogged down by too much happiness, where you're distracted, but you're not bogged down by too much suffering, which is also a distraction.
I was going to ask you that question. You brought it up. Reincarnation. Can you explain that?
Our bodies are made of flesh. It's made of things that will break down and it will decompose and then create new life after that. I mean, that's science. That's what we know. We know that we can get cremated, we can get buried, and even when you get buried, your body will decompose. And so the same idea with what we call soul, or what Christians call soul. The idea is that that will also be recycled into a new body or a new life or a new entity, whether that is human, another type of existence, or animal, or whatever it is that idea of reincarnation, constantly cycling through until you're able to break that cycle.
So do you go throughout your life, and not your work life, but your personal life, thinking about reincarnation constantly? Is that something that is always in the back of your mind? Because I feel like with Christians, generally speaking, it's, oh, if I do this, I'm going to go to hell. If I do this, I might go to heaven. If I be good and if Jesus saves me, I have, a one-way ticket up to heaven. But is it always in the back of your head? That's like what you're doing and how it impacts?
Short answer, no. Honestly, I don't think about that at all. And that's why Buddhism fits well for me too, because the goal isn't to drone on about what could be or what has been, but the goal is to be in the present moment and try to figure out a way to break out of whatever's happening at this moment in time. But I also want to preface that the way we talk about religion or the way we talk about Buddhism is very different from the way a lot of people will practice or put it into action. And I'm pretty sure that's how Christianity as well is. There are a lot of things that should be done a certain way, but then living in this current society, in this current world, you can't necessarily follow all those specific rules. And so it gets not manipulated, but it gets altered so that it can fit your current life a little bit better.
I actually agree with the altered state of religion. And again, altered in air quotes, because one of the things that's impacted my view of religion is almost like a historical contextual view of it, where it's as bad as it sounds, it's like the victor writes history to some extent. And when you're looking back thousands upon thousands of years, I've had this approach towards religion where men have impacted religion and women, of course, but traditionally you're looking at kings and queens and popes and wars, and you have the holy wars in the Middle East, where it was the Christians versus the Muslims. You have what happened to the Jews. It's a lot of historical context when humans are pretty much just at the forefront of being human. I know some people will argue with me on that from a belief standpoint, where everything happens for a reason, or the word of God has been passed down via these certain individuals. And I understand that aspect of religion, but I also understand the aspect of when you're looking at current day politics, all it takes is a few people voting in the opposite direction for laws to change and interpretations to change and how we practice and do things to change. And so I've always thought about that in at least the form of the Catholic Church, where you have a bunch of popes and you have a bunch of other individuals and kings and queens dictating what they want, where they want to go with things. And historically, I believe that it's like all it takes is one different individual at that time and place for a different path to go. As far as the Protestants, it was actually King Henry, and he wanted an annulment. Like in that moment of time, if King Henry did not want an annulment from his wife, then these sects of Protestants may not have branched out. It may not have ever occurred. So historically, just from a religious standpoint, I look at the fact that it's like there are some instances of religion that feel very man-made, and that we're just playing either catch up, or we're being reactionary, or we're trying to base what we're doing from scripture or writings or whatever from thousands upon thousands of years ago and trying to apply it to the modern day. And you get that in the law too, when you're looking at trying to examine the Constitution. You have different interpretations where you have textualists and literalists. They're like, what does the text say? And you have other people that are trying to interpret it, or they're trying to be more pragmatic. So it's just, it's different when it comes to religion. That's the altered, the altered word you use was like, okay, that's something that actually occurs, because to the victor goes the spoils, and they write history. All it takes is that one person to bring that religion across the world for it to hold and have an impact on thousands, if not millions of people.
That's the uniqueness of what Buddhism is because there has not been any war out there that has been started by Buddhism. Most of the wars do sprout out from people who believe in a higher being. Again, I'm not pointing out specifically Christianity, but there has been a lot of wars based on those sort of religions. But there's always that they're fighting for their God or their prophet. Whereas Buddhism, we don't have those things. So there's not really anyone that you're fighting for. You're really just fighting for yourself. And so, like I said, the thing that gets altered is the goal is to live life in neutrality. So you're not doing anything in excess, nothing in excess, whether that's happiness in excess or suffering in excess. You want in neither end of that. But in reality, obviously, us being humans, most Buddhists will then default into being just happy, doing good, focusing on doing good, because then at least we know that even though we remain in this life cycle, we are at least creating good karma that will come back in a good way rather than doing bad, which will then bring back bad karma.
Now, if we're looking at Buddhism, Because Christianity is very, very big on and historically speaking as well, let's convert as many people to believe in Jesus Christ. Let's build churches and let's spread the word of God. And it's been done 2,000 years now. And for Buddhism, is there a push for spreading Buddhism? How does a religion like that grow, or is it at risk of eventually dying off as modern times keep evolving?
Great question. There is no push to convert at all. It's actually against what we believe in. So the idea behind Buddhism is it's something that if you are meant to come across it and it was your time to need it, then you will find it. And so no one goes out there. You're not going to see a monk go out there and spreading Buddhism. The person that will convert to Buddhism will have self-seeked. They will be the ones to seek Buddhism out, whether that is through struggle, suffering, or maybe they were introduced by a book or whatever it may be, some happenstance. But it's not something that we go out and try to convert people, because that is not the goal. The goal is we are supposed to just remain within ourselves, what we can do in our vicinity, and we want to make sure that we optimize our life before we worry about other people. It almost sounds very individualistic, because it is, because the only way that you're going to get out of the cycle is by what you do yourself. It's not what you do for others, but it's what you yourself can strive to find or come into knowledge, learn more of, or find that middle path and be neutral. And so the goal is never to go out and convert. But I understand that with Christianity, because Christians believe that their scripture is the one and only, they want to go out and try to save people. And so converting is important. That's the beauty of Buddhism, is that even though we don't actively go out, we're still quite a large sector of the religion in the entire world, because it's something that, again, I don't want to say innately you are to find it when you find it, but that's what it is that no one is going out there spreading it. You just fall into it. And that's why I also think that it's really not a religion. I do think that a Catholic could be Buddhist, because Buddhism doesn't say that you can't believe in all these other things. Buddhism just says you have to walk that middle path if you want to reach Nirvana. That is literally the only teaching, that the most important teaching that you could get out of Buddhism. It's not about, oh, you have to believe in this person, or you have to believe in this entity, or you have to do this certain thing. It's really just neutrality. And so you could be a Christian, you could be Jewish and still walk the middle path and believe in God. But if you can be neutral, you may reach Nirvana in your own way.
And that's a big difference as far as at least Christianity. And I've had this discussion with other individuals of other denominations and Catholicism. You could do everything right and follow the 10 commandments and be a good Christian, be a good Catholic, and really have that one-way ticket to heaven. Well, other individuals could, in theory, also do that. The issue that the religion presents is the fact that because they are not saved by Jesus Christ, because they do not have a belief in Jesus Christ, they cannot achieve that. So that's where the conversion comes into place, where it's like, no, in order for you to be saved, you have to recognize Jesus Christ and you have to be a follower. And that was always a problem I had in talking with other people, because it's hellfire and brimstone, especially when you're a Catholic and you're learning like, oh, you're going to go to hell, and if you do this, you'll be punished for eternity. Well, I have an argument that I would make. You're telling me that an island of people that are the best people in the world, that have never had any exposure to Western culture, that have never had any exposure to Christianity, that don't even know what it is, by the very nature of them being good, they aren't going to be welcomed into heaven. Like that's where we're going, because they've never been introduced to this figure and this religion and this process. And I've always had a hard time with that aspect of formal religion, because to your point, you can walk that line. Like I know that you can be a good Christian and a good Catholic by being a good person and following the tenets without ever realizing that you're following those tenets. But you're still in the end going to find eternal damnation because you've just never been introduced to the guy. And that was a struggle point I've always had with just how religion plays out in that dynamic.
So then what keeps you within the religion then? I feel like that's quite, not barrier, but it's quite a big part of Christianity that you just mentioned that is against what you're saying,
Yeah,
like if
yeah.
you struggle with that, why are you continuing to struggle with it? Why do you allow it? to be a struggle?
Well, I think I don't allow it to be a struggle in that sense because I'm confident in my faith. I believe that there is a God. And in the same realm, I believe that we could also be living in a simulation. I have this very traditional approach to religion at times. I like the historical aspects or certain historical aspects of the Catholic Church. I like the foundation. I like having a baseline in something, a baseline of morals and beliefs and ethics that's important for an individual. And I'm not really one to point out how do you get there. Mine was instilled via my religion. Yours is instilled via your religion. We're doing the same thing. We were taught different approaches to it. But as I've gotten older and as I've come to form my own mind and my own opinions and my own beliefs, I'm okay with claiming Catholicism, with being a part of the Catholic Church. But I will be the first one to say I really don't know. A lot of people struggle with that because they think by saying I don't know or saying that all these other things can exist, they're recognizing the fact that their religion might be wrong. And nobody truly knows until we're dead. And that's what it amounts to. So I don't know what's going to happen. This is the other crazy thing. And I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know if you've heard of this asteroid. I think it's 3I Atlas, and it's going through the solar system. And there have been scientists that are like, well, it's not following the scientific logic of what an asteroid should do. Does it have life on it? Is it sent from another planet? Like, all it takes is for aliens to come down and religion's thrown head over heels. It's all the arguments, all the in God's image, it goes out the window if there's other life throughout the universe. Because from a religious standpoint, we are the center of the universe. And so you just don't know what's going to happen. I don't think we have a understanding. And so I have a part of me that is open to those other theories and those other practices and those other interpretations. And I am very good at putting things in different boxes where I can be a Catholic and also say, I really enjoy what Buddhism is doing. And I really do believe that there's parts of Islam that are really good. What Jewish people do here, I really like that. And atheism, I can understand their arguments. I can go back and forth on all of it and have an appreciation. And that goes to my parents showing me all the different cultures when we were younger and being in Chicago and seeing all the different things and having an appreciation for that, because it's also an appreciation for life. Some people get so caught up in their upbringing and their views. And we even talked about this in the political episode. They don't want to, like, it's like if you open that door, there's so many other things that people are worried about being stereotyped as or being associated with. And I guess I'm just not afraid of that. I'm not afraid for somebody to call me a bad Catholic. It's, oh, okay, fine. I'm a bad Catholic in your opinion. Well, I don't care, because I am comfortable with how I practice. And I have friends like you. We have other friends that are of different religions, and it doesn't change my way I feel about them. And my baseline is in my faith and the moral tenets of that faith. But I also am a firm believer in, like, we really, really don't know what's going to happen. So I don't know. Why do we not try to understand others more instead of doubling down on our beliefs?
I have a personal question for you to
Yeah.
follow all of that. Like you said, you use these tenets to believe what you believe. So when something unexpected happens or something doesn't go your way, how do you rationalize that in your head? I mean, if we can give like a personal example, when COVID happened, what did you think that was? Do you think that was God's way of thinning the herd? They were punishing us in some way. How do you rationalize things that happen like that are kind of left field? Because I'm curious, because then I want to respond and just let you know what my thought process is coming from like a Buddhist perspective.
So when things happen like that, I never think of religion as my first go-to. But you could say in the Old Testament of the Bible, there's the great flood in Noah's Ark where God is just coming down saying, I am going to thin the herd. Humans are not doing what they should be doing. And so I'm going to kill off a bunch of people and start over, essentially. I don't believe that. I don't believe that God punishes. It's one of those things where I'm a believer from a religious standpoint of free will, and that we are here on earth and we are able to do things of our free will. Other people believe, nope, your path has already been decided. that path is going to be the one that you walk, and there's nothing that can change it. Whatever you end up as, you end up as. But I believe in free will, and I believe that from a standpoint of God looking down, he's looking at us hands off, saying, I'm not going to intervene. And it's on us to then walk whatever path we want to walk. And if you stick with religion, however I walk that path, I'm either going to go to heaven or I'm going to go to hell. So when it comes to big things like that, I don't necessarily go first questioning God or a higher power. I just look at the logic of the world. The logic of COVID was that something bad happened over in Asia. It got spread, and we didn't do a good job as a overall population of washing our hands and quarantining and keeping to ourselves. And then the politicians ran with whatever story helped them, and doctors and nurses were pushed to the very limit, and the world got a good taste of, hey, if we ever have something serious happen to us, how are we going to respond? There is some appropriate response, but I also think, why did the toilet paper disappear? Why was all the toilet paper gone? That is a response that we never expected. But sure enough, now the next time something serious happens, people are going to be gobbling up the toilet paper. I don't put my religious aspect into things. I do believe in karma. I do believe that if you give good, you'll get good. Like eventually it'll find its way back to you. And so I do believe that, like, when you're doing good things, that good things will come your way. And I kind of believe that, like, if you're going to do some bad things are going to find you.
Would you say that all the accomplishments and the things you have currently in life, wife, healthy kid, healthy pregnancy so far, everything, living parents, is that all a gift from God? Or do you think that that's something that you have personally cultivated and created and manifested?
There's an old saying, or I guess it's a joke or a story, an old lesson that is very appropriate. So back in Catholic school, we were given this lesson, and it's a man is sitting there in the flood, and a flood is starting. It's starting to rain. It's starting to pour, and it's like an inch deep. And so a guy drives by and says, "Hey, it's starting to rain. Do you want to ride?" He's like, "No, I'm good. God will take care of me." And then the water is up a little bit higher, and a guy on a bike comes by and, "Hey, it's starting to rain. That water's getting pretty high. You want to ride?" "No, God will take care of me." Now the water is getting up to his waist, and a guy in a rowboat comes by. "God will take care of me." Guy in a boat comes by. "God will take care of me." And then finally, the guy drowns and dies. And when he gets to the gates of heaven, he says, "God, what happened? I trusted you to do this for me." And God goes, "What are you talking about? I sent a bike, I sent a boat, I sent a canoe, I sent a car, and you refused all of them because your belief was so great that you'll be taken care of, that you don't actually see what's being done." So I believe that there are tests and things that get put in front of us, but it's on us as individuals to take that opportunity, to pursue that thing, to recognize what's going on. I believe in prayer. There's a comfort and hope in prayer, but I don't believe that prayer can solve all of your problems. As a human, you need action. And I'm sure that you can relate as a doctor, where you've probably seen people in your practice that their religion is so formidable, their religious practice is so formidable that they think prayer is going to solve the problem. And then they find peace at the end, where it's, well, that wasn't God's plan. But you're sitting back like, "Hey, I could have given some antibiotics and we could have healed this thing up, and you just didn't do it." God plays a role in everything, but I don't think he's as hands-on as people think that he is, or at least believe that he is, at least in general Christian practice or Catholic practice.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Like, because you're on the outside looking in, do you feel that Christians and Muslims and Jews, do you feel that there's just like this reliance on the higher power to dictate life?
From an outside view, I do feel like there are very specific ways that Christians or anyone that believes in a higher power will utilize that higher power, whether that is because they are suffering. They're trying to give a reason. They're trying to find a reason for it. They need a reason for it. So they're going to utilize it as an excuse or a crutch, but sometimes they utilize it as a reason for hope. It's a tool to psychologically improve themselves. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If that's what's needed for them to move forward in their life, to proceed through life in a better place, if that's what's needed, then that's great. Again, and that's why I think that makes Buddhism stand out, is because the goal, there is nothing out there that is forcing anything on us. Our decisions are our own decisions. Anything that we do now will cause a reaction, and that reaction will infinitely cause more reactions surrounding us. Anything that comes my way, I know that it was because I put it out there. So if something bad happens, it's on me. If it's something good happens, it's on me. I'm not looking for a reason or looking for something to place this event on. It's not that unique to what you've mentioned so far, but the onus is on me, and everything that I go through life is on me. And so if I want something more, I go out and I get it. And at the end of the day, I need to be happy with what I've decided. I guess instead of focusing on trying to please this higher being or following this specific entity, I am just focused on making sure that I'm happy, that I am comfortable where I'm at, and that gives me a lot of peace. Because another big thing in religion is just life and death in general. And it gives me a very unique perspective on death because I deal with it a lot in medicine, but also in my personal life. I know that my parents are going to eventually pass, but I don't feel like I struggle like a lot of other people do when it comes to thinking about that. And my parents don't either. We all understand that we have a very finite amount of days and it could be gone the next. And so we try to live each day very full, and we try to make sure that we let each other know that we love each other and that we're doing everything for each other. And so whenever that may happen, it happens. We don't think that, oh, they're being taken back somewhere or it was their time. It wasn't. That is just the way it is. It's a cause and effect, and it's karma, and it's just cycling around. And Buddhism, it makes life simple for me.
Simple can be very, very good. I have my books from when I was in Catholic school, and the Catechism is like the Catholic book on all the rules you must follow. And I swear, it feels like thousands of rules that you should follow to be a good Catholic. And of course, you're going to try to be a good Catholic, and then you're going to sin, and then you are going to repent, and then you are going to sin, and then you're going to repent. And then, by the time you pass, it's like, okay, well, we're going to look back on your life and see how things go. For other Christians, it's a little bit different because you don't really have that sin, repent. It's just you're saved. So let's move forward with the fact that now let's just be a good Christian and try to save others. That's probably not the best way of putting it, but it's a very simplistic way of putting it. But it gets so intricate with religion, especially when you start branching off. And in this day and age, especially with Christianity, you're getting a lot of non-denominational sections of the church, which is people just coming together to then practice in whatever light they feel comfortable, whether that is having a rock band and LED lights and millions of dollars pumped into your church, or literally just going to the neighborhood pancake house on a Sunday and having a minister or preacher spread the word of God. And so you're getting to a point where there's so many branches off the traditional religion and how to do it that 2,000 years from now, what does that look like? It could be completely changed. So the simplicity of something like Buddhism is very alluring to people. Nowadays, everybody wants to read the self-help book that gives them all the answers. I have read books that are based on how the Dalai Lama practices. There is an approach to that to try to find an inner peace and live life in a manner where you can just be happy, and it's not all the things that you get from the world. It's not all your materialistic belongings. It's just being comfortable with being comfortable. And that's a simplistic approach that a lot of people our age and younger are now seeking out, because the religion is getting so convoluted and so boomer to some extent that people either don't want to practice or their beliefs are so flawed because of the system or how the religion has treated them that it's a deterrent. So people look for those other ways out. Ways out is a bad way of putting it. People look for those other avenues of achieving some sort of belief.
As you were talking about the different sects and the different branches of Christianity, I'm trying to think if we have something similar in Buddhism, and we really don't, because the teachings are the same. The teachings are, no matter what type of Buddhist you are, it's the same. You're trying to get to that neutrality. You don't want to do anything in excess. There is not really anything different. There's no any other belief. The only two branches that you could see is one potentially eats meat and the other one is vegetarian. And the reason that has branched off is actually quite funny. Is one, obviously you want to be vegetarian because you don't want to harm another life, another being, and so therefore they have committed to being vegetarian. Whereas the other will eat meat only if it is offered. So they are giving the opportunity for the community, if they're going to bring food to their monks, then they're creating that good karma by bringing food. The monks do not want to then reject that offering, so they will eat meat if it's offered, but they're not going to go out and like catch it themselves, kill it themselves. So that is truly like, that's truly the only branching that you get within Buddhism. Is how do we practice that? Like, how do we move forward? That the idea is the same. It is simple like that because there's not a higher being that is supposed to be at the very top. We all think of the Buddha. He never told us that he was a prophet. He never told us he was God. He never told us that he was this almighty being. He was just a prince. He was actually a prince in India that found that he was living in riches. And when he left, he found all this suffering. And he felt like, why is it that he could live a certain life and then the people outside of his palace lived a different life? He didn't think that was fair. And that's what caused him to find this journey. How does he reach nirvana where there is no suffering at all, but also not too much enjoyment? And so that's where he became a teacher. But again, in Western history, like the way we are taught of Buddhism, we think the Buddha is this prophet or this higher being, but he is not. He is just another human that found nirvana, and that these were the teachings that he found, or the way that he found the middle path. And he has written that down, and that has been passed down through generations, through different cultures and countries. There isn't anything that you can really misinterpret. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, and I don't want to sound ignorant at all, but when you think of Buddha, you think of, at least from Western individuals, you think of rubbing the Buddha belly for luck. Is that a thing in the Buddhist religion? Are we just being insulting to a religion by doing that?
Not insulting. It's just very westernized. That's like saying Panda Express is real Chinese food. It's just something that has been created for a specific story, a specific narrative. There could well be a person out there that has reached nirvana that looks like that particular Buddha. But no, that is not something that we follow.
So there's no rubbing of a Buddha belly.
There is no roughing of a Buddha because again, the Buddha doesn't grant any wishes.
Yeah.
They don't determine anything. They are not determining if you're good or bad. They simply taught us something, and you're there to either follow or you don't follow.
When you're looking at some religions, like the ignorance with some religions can end up being very, very insulting. So, for instance, one of the quirks I have, and again, I grew up traditional Catholic, and so I hold sacred some things from my religious personality as opposed to like my logical personality. There is a rosary, and on the rosary, it looks like a necklace, and you have different prayers for every bead that's on the rosary. So part of the practice, at least in Catholicism, is to pray your rosary, either for comfort or either to repent for your sins. It is a thing that we are taught in grade school. And everybody, you know, who's Catholic has a rosary. I've been given rosaries on days of sacrament, whether that was my baptism or my first communion, so on and so forth. So I hold a rosary in the same esteem I would hold any other religious artifact. I would never try to disrespect an artifact from another religion that they hold sacred. But I would see people in college wearing rosaries around thinking it's a fashion statement. Because at our time, it was all the affliction shirts and all the Jersey Shore craziness that was going on. And I always took a little bit of insult to that because in my viewpoint, that is a mechanism for prayer and solitude and belief and you sitting with your thoughts and reflecting. It's not a fashion statement. So in the Buddha belly instance, you see the Western people say, oh, you got to rub the Buddha belly for luck. And I'm wondering, okay, are we just being insulting because of our ignorance to that? So I appreciate you clearing that up.
But again, I don't think it would bother any true Buddhist because it's so trivial. Why are we letting something like that bother us? It's not affecting us in any way. However, the public views it doesn't matter because the goal is to focus in on us and our own personal development or growth. But that actually leads me into a question for you about how you think religion has cultivated or has molded the way you practice or view law on a day-to-day basis. You mentioned the way you read through and interpret scripture is very similar to the way some people will read through the Constitution and determine what's right and wrong and how they may interpret it. What other ways do you feel like Catholicism has bled into your career?
So again, moral baseline and moral roots in the tradition of Catholicism and being a good person. When you're looking at Christianity and Catholicism, you're looking at the Ten Commandments, which are, do not steal, do not kill, do not covet thy neighbor's wife, which then goes to like infidelity and cheating, do not lie, all those really basic tenets that were passed down in the Old Testament to Moses. Most religions, and not even most religions, just most upbringing for a lot of people, that's the natural law. That's the natural order of life. You're not looking to kill people. You're not looking to steal. You're not looking to do all these things. I feel like regardless of religion, if you restarted humanity, those things would still appear. It would still come to the point of these are bad things to do. We probably shouldn't do this, or we're not going to be a society for long. But I do feel like the just and the doing right is important, and that's always guided me through my practice, whether it's my education or my professional career, where I want to do right by people. Similar to Buddhism, I do believe in karma. I do believe that if I'm bad to people, it's going to come back around. And whether I make that up in my head or it's something that actually happens, I do believe you get what you give. Now, when it comes to the practice, I struggle with the standpoint of combining religion with politics and with law. I understand that our laws are based in like Judeo-Christian beliefs and Judeo-Christian uh, tenets. You do not kill. That's in the Ten Commandments. It's also one of the things that we hold most sacred in the United States is like, do not murder your neighbor. There needs to be a separation. So when I practice, I always try to recognize the fact that every person's different. If I'm dealing with you as my client, or if I'm dealing with you as my real estate partner, your belief system and your practices could be completely different than mine. Here is a real life example. We practice two different things, but you and I are able to communicate, have great conversation, love and respect each other, be a big part of each other's families. It's like we're able to do it. We don't hold it against anybody. But if I was a strict fundamentalist, my approach may not be the same. I might just be around the people that believe in the exact same thing I believe in. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the way I want to live life and I want to practice. So I try to leave religion, just like politics. I try to leave that out of my general practice because I can get along more so with the other individuals that I deal with instead of trying to throw my political beliefs or throw my religious beliefs all over the place. And I find peace in that because I'm confident in what I believe. I'm confident in how I practice. Same thing with my wife. Like I'm not bugged by somebody thinking differently than me.
Can I have a follow-up question? So we've talked about public defender and how they are assigned cases. What if they are assigned a case where there is a murderer and it goes against their religion to defend a murderer? Can they say that? Can they cite that, hey, this is against what I believe. I can't defend this particular client. Can I step back and you assign a different person? Is that allowed?
In some cases, it can be, and in some cases, it wouldn't be good enough. Again, when you're looking at that situation, the judge is the ultimate decision maker. If a public defender, that's what they signed up for. They signed up to be assigned to cases.
Mhm.
If you were working in the private aspect of things, somebody came in and said, hey, I did this heinous crime. You can say, I'm not representing you. There were situations from a family law perspective where we would not represent certain individuals because of what they had either claimed to do or were being accused of doing just because it didn't align with our morals. And again, that's if you go back and listen to our podcast on capitalism, so that's capitalism for you. You get to contract and work with the people that you want to work with. But as a public defender, you're signing up via the state that you are going to represent those who have no representation. Now, in any case, you just can't jump off the case. Sometimes a case has gone so far or you're in too deep that even if as a lawyer, if you try to get off the case, the judge wouldn't allow it. They would say, absolutely not. Like we're in the middle of trial. We're on the last day of trial. You can't just leave your client. You're going to finish this out. And there's societal reasons for that. There's public policy reasons for that. But there's other instances in which if you went up to the judge and said, hey, judge, I just can't do this for whatever reason, they might say, okay, well, then I'm going to assign public defender number 2 and they'll take over from here. So it just depends. That goes to a lot of our current politics in the sense of using your religion to justify doing or not doing something. And we see that a lot with like gay marriage. I want to say it's about to go back before the Supreme Court, where I want to say somebody was suing because they chose not to marry a gay couple. And now it's a question of whether or not that violated their religious beliefs and so on and so forth. There's weird justifications there where you're using your religion to justify something. And I struggle with that point because it's important to respect the autonomy of an individual and what they believe. But I also don't like the fact that you could leverage it for maybe not popular ideas or the wrong reasons.
That person's shoe, though. Very hardcore Christian. They believe that what they're doing is correct. By them defending or by them signing, that marriage license for the gay couple, do you think that that person truly believes that they are sinning then by being forced into it because society is forcing them?
There are some individuals that would feel that way. There are some individuals that are so tapped into their beliefs and they have a belief system and they don't want to violate it, that by doing something like that, they believe that they're going to go to hell. They believe that they're going to be judged. They believe that their community may not support them anymore. I truly think that that is something that happens in our society. But whether or not I should be the decider of it that's right or wrong, that's where some of my libertarian comes out, where it's, look, if you don't want to do it, that's fine, we'll go to the next person, but society and the law and people will judge you in whatever way that they're going to judge you. It's like that. I want to say it was a bakery a few years back that the gay couple went in and they wanted to have them bake a cake and they refused service. They're like, no, we're not going to do that. I fully believe that that is within the right of the business to say no. I also fully believe that that company should have the worst Yelp reviews, and that like when it comes down to it, you vote with your dollar. You're either going to get an influx of people or you are going to put it out there and you're not going to succeed because you're not getting along with your neighbor. It's a struggle because I go back and forth, because legally speaking, we should all have the right to do certain things. But then when you throw religion and morals into it, it's like, well, they should have the right to do this and they should have the right to do that. To sum up that belief, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe that all speech should be free. By saying that, I'm also saying that the racist should have a voice, the prejudiced should have a voice, the insane and the crazy should have a voice, because I'm holding dear the freedom of speech. So you have to recognize, by like playing in one of those realms, you're opening the door to believing that racist should have a soapbox to stand on. And that's hard because you have to listen to the speech you don't want to hear, but by the very nature of keeping speech free, you're allowing it. And I feel very similar to religion. I want to throw the same question to you because we're in two different worlds. Like from a standpoint of the law, we based our laws loosely on Judeo-Christian beliefs. Medicine is more of a scientific approach. And the way medicine has evolved is trial and error, passing on things that have worked versus passing on things that don't work. And if you look at some of the medicinal stuff that has occurred as far as studies, some of these studies historically are absolutely heinous. But when you look back, they were necessary to figure out this, that, or the other. So how do you feel religion plays into medical practice and specifically your own practice?
Well, obviously, in the Western world, I do think religion plays a huge part, especially when it comes to the political side of how medicine and healthcare is politicized as well as restricted for certain people or groups of people. So that's the unfortunate part of the Western world. But for Buddhism, I actually think that medicine it's one of the best careers I could have gone into because I am able to stay completely neutral in everything that we discuss or I deal with. So whether that's a cancer treatment or COVID or a sinus infection, my goal isn't to impose a specific agenda. My goal is to just lay out the options and you get to decide. The patient gets to decide. So that's kind of how Buddhism is. Everything has been laid out for us. As a Buddhist, I can choose to follow what I follow or go where I want to go, but it's my choice. And I have to then deal with whatever the after effects are going to be. So same thing with the patient is if you choose not to get this particular chemo or radiation for your cancer, then this may happen. And so Buddhism really allows me to keep everything else out of it, keep my emotions out of it. Obviously, I feel for my patients. I know when the decision can be very hard. I will sit there and I will cry and be the shoulder for my patients as well. But my ultimate goal isn't to sway them to make a specific decision. I will give them my opinion if they ask. But at the end of the day, my goal is to be as neutral as possible. And as I'm explaining this, that's probably the most neutral, the most Buddhist thing that I do on a daily basis is when I speak to my patients, because I stay very neutral, which is that middle path, not excessive on either end. I just lay it out there and allow the patient to decide.
Granted, I feel like Buddhism, to what you said earlier, is very individualistic. Are you ever faced with a situation in which, because a lot of people rely on your advice and your direction when it comes to their medical health and even health of their family members or their children, so on and so forth. Are you ever positioned in a way, and I'm trying to think of a good analogy I could use, and I'm sure one will come to me, but are you ever put in a position where your own beliefs and walking the middle path and trying to be good, because regardless of staying neutral, neutral doesn't apply for you to good and bad. You're not trying to be like, I don't want to be too good. I don't want to be too bad. I need to be middle. Buddhism is be as good as you can be, but your state of being should be neutrality. So are you ever faced with that point of like the advice I'm about to give or the path that this person's about to go on? I'm putting them on a bad path, or I'm giving them the bad option when I should be giving them the good option, and I'm afraid that karma is going to come back and bite me in the ass because I gave them the bad option, or so on and so forth, anything like that?
The best scenario for something that might give you my perspective is abortions. That's a very controversial topic,
Yeah.
abortions. But for me, it's not that controversial. My goal is to just lay out the options and then let the patient decide what's best for them, and then they have to deal with the after effects. So if I felt like doing the abortion myself would be against my beliefs, then I could just offer them another resource. They can go to this physician, or they can go to this location to get the prescription, or they can do this. So I still lay out all of their options because I'm staying neutral. I'm remaining neutral. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to tell them right or wrong. It's their decision. It's their body. And that is where it remains individual. Like I'm going to do what's best for me, where my conscience is happy and okay with the decisions that I've made. And so again, if I felt like this patient shouldn't be getting an abortion, I'm not going to say that, right? I'm not going to tell them that. I'm still going to lay out their options and give them the resources that they deserve, and they get to decide how they want to pursue it.
I have another question for you. And I'm not trying to make this a gotcha moment. I'm just trying to understand how that differs. And again, I'm not trying to politicize this from a position of abortion and a fetus versus a human and so on and so forth. But to that standpoint, if you had an individual who brought their child in, and God forbid it was, hey, my child's sick, they're getting really, really expensive, I just can't afford this anymore. So what's the best way that I can just kind of let this child wither away and pass and not have to worry about it ever again? Granted, this is an extreme, completely illegal, right? But from your standpoint, are you then sitting there and be like, well, I have to remain neutral. They're going to make their own decision. So if you want, you can go the adoption route. If you want, you can keep trucking on and try to get that kid healthy. If you want, you can just leave the kid in the closet for a year and then not worry about the child. How do you take that approach when there's something that's clearly wrong with the situation, but you are basing it on neutrality?
I will try to be as Buddhist as I can, but I'm still human. So in scenarios where there's an obvious wrong, I'm not going to just let it be. And also as a physician, I'm a mandatory reporter. So whether that is child abuse, rape, anything like that, I have an obligation to report it. Or if it's found out later and I didn't report it, then I could actually lose my license. At the end of the day, I still have to make sure that my livelihood is intact.
Which then is very interesting because as you are required to report, that's per what? The law. The law again is then based in other things. So in a, Orwellian 1984 style world, and I think people are genuinely afraid of this in this day and age with politics on both the far right, far left, right, left, whatever, liberal, conservative, but somebody coming into power that then makes these laws that are akin to communist era witch hunts to, let's say, abortion. Let's say in a state where it is illegal, now you're required to report it, but that's the law based in religion. That's very interesting, where you still have to follow laws that are based in some instance regarding religion. And we've talked about this in the political episode. If there was a federal ban on abortion, and the entire United States, you could not get an abortion, your whole way of practice would then have to change with how you would have to report, because it might go to the point of, well, hey, if anybody comes in and says that they're even thinking about getting an abortion, you have to report that. And now you're following a law, most people could argue, based primarily in a religious instance of thou shalt not kill. So it can get very convoluted very fast.
Right. That's the power of being where I'm at, is that if that were that detrimental to my belief system, then I would pick up and go and I would move. I would move to a different location. And we had this discussion with the political episode as well. We have that luxury and that privilege to be able to pick up and go if it ever got bad. Hopefully, thankfully, whatever it is, hopefully we're not heading in that direction at all.
I don't want to put any of your patients on blast. Do you ever see any patients that are basing their decision on their religious beliefs, and it is clearly, like, scientifically the wrong decision that they should not be making for whichever reason?
Yes, there are a lot of struggling families out there. There's a lot of struggling parents, whether they have 4 or 5 kids, 6 kids, or they have no kids and they can barely put food on the table, and yet they have accidentally become pregnant. But because of their religion, they're not allowed to have an abortion, and therefore they have to carry it to term. So I see that all the time, and that's not a reportable offense. Whether that kid comes out malnourished, whether the child gets fed or not fed, that is out of my hands, unfortunately. Now, if they do take that child to see me as their physician, that's a different story. If I see signs of abuse, whether they're restricting food or kids not growing appropriately, then yes, that is a mandatory report. But yes, there are a lot of those scenarios where a family's probably would have been better off or could have saved resources and found a better time. Like, again, I don't want to make it seem like pregnancy and abortion is so simple and easy. It's still a hard decision, no matter who you are, whether you wanted the pregnancy or not, whether it was an accident or not. But it's something that I don't know how it would be legislated harder, but it should be more difficult to have a kid. But unfortunately, it's not. It's easy to have a kid if you just put the right parts together. But I wish there was better education about it so that we could see the ramifications. Because I don't think the answer is straight to abortion, but I also don't think the answer is you got to carry it to term and just figure out day by day how you're going to manage. Like, there should be more resources in place so that we can help both sides of it. People who do want to have kids that are struggling, but also people who don't want to have kids and are struggling.
I think that goes to the point that because people are logical, people also associate that with apathy, as if you don't recognize the human aspect of that. So when you say, look, you cannot afford to have a baby, you are, 16 years old, you have the rest of your life to look forward to. This is going to be a financial hardship. You are going to be living in a box under a bridge, so on and so forth. Like, those are logical statements to be made by having a baby at a young age, or if you're not in a socioeconomic position to have a baby. But then when you state it, people will say, oh, well, you're so apathetic. Like, you just don't care. You have no soul. You have no heart. Do you understand that you're murdering a child? Some people have a hard time separating the two, and it goes to legal arguments as well. There is a logical response to this, but just because I'm being logical doesn't necessarily mean that I'm apathetic to the situation, or I've lost my human element, or I don't have feelings regarding that. And I've gotten that a lot from my family and my wife and my friends, where sometimes I'm so logical about things. It's, wow, you're really cold. Why are you so cold? Why are you just so like it's not bugging you? And my response is, it does bug me. But in this situation, I have to be logical because the situation requires me to be logical. It doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. I just also recognize that this isn't the point where I need to share my opinion. I'm just giving the logical responses and the logical avenues. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm trying not to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to be straightforward, logical, give you the avenues that you need in this lawsuit or in this deal or in this negotiation, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, the abortion topic is it's such a whole another thing that we could go through. And if any of our listeners are interested, please let us know if you want to hear an episode on abortion and our takes on it from the legal and medical side. But yeah, it's a hard conversation to have, and especially when you pull religion into it, it drives people very differently. But I do feel like we forget sometimes we focus in on one part of the story rather than the whole story.
Yeah.
So we focus in on the fetus or the baby, but then we forget about the mother or the father or the parents that will also be struggling once baby is actually born. And what we struggle in our society is giving resources for all three components, mom, dad, and baby. We funnel it to the lowest common denominator, and we only focus on it for a very short period of time. And then once it's out, it's done. And then we move on. It's a tough one.
And for our listeners, we're not harping on abortion because we can make this same argument towards the MAID aspect of things. And we had a MAID episode, medical assistance in dying and physician assisted dying or physician assisted suicide, where you could make the same type of argument that we're making here to an elderly person who has a terminal illness, like the cost that's associated with this, the stress that's on the family and the friends and the resources that are there to try experimental drugs or keep them in hospice and so on and so forth. Like, you can make this same argument on a variety of things. So I don't want our listeners thinking that we're harping specifically on abortion in this realm, because you can apply this same scenario across many different facets. And if you took the MAID episode and you looked at somebody who it's terminal, and suicide is also a pretty big religious dynamic. And in our faith, if you commit suicide, you're going straight to hell. But in that instance, it's mercy. It's being able to have a freedom from pain, or a freedom from this terminal illness that is withering you away. The religion plays an aspect of it, but I just want to be clear that we're not poking at just abortion. These arguments can be made across a wide variety of medical issues that you come across.
Great. What a very just great conversation on religion and how it affects our day to day careers. Is there anything else you wanted to add about the religion in the law at all?
No long. That's it. Obviously we could talk for days about how our religion and other religions impact our practices and how we deal with people. And if you guys want to hear more, definitely let us know, because there's other instances of religion in our society. There's religion at the point of separation of church and state. You had mentioned earlier that there's religious aspects as to how medical care is made available, as well as access. And I think those are all very, very interesting topics. But I just want to say that I really appreciate the back and forth that you and I have, because people could have the respectful type of conversation where you're seeking understanding, not seeking to win. Like, this didn't feel like an argument. With us, it always feels like a conversation. Although the questions might be a little pressing and they might put you on your toes a little bit, it makes you think. And I'm sure going back and re-listening to this podcast in the future, I'm going to change some thoughts in my head and rethink about things. And I just think it's one of those things that kind of throws a light bulb up where you're like, oh, that's another way to look at it. I'm sure you feel the same.
Absolutely. Again, we're not trying to put each other down. We're not trying to get that gotcha moment at all. We always have a really good back and forth and trying to explore and educate each other, but also hopefully educating the viewers out there so that they can see our perspectives and learn from it.
And these conversations between you and I have been going on since college. You had even mentioned that we would be 2:00 in the morning in our dorm room, and we would be sitting there over some food and some video games, just talking about, hey, well, what's your opinion on this? Well, my opinion is this. Well, why do you believe that? It's just a good way of understanding the people that are important to you and seeing where they come from and seeing what they believe, and finding that middle ground. That's going to be it for this episode of the Medico-Legal Brief, where medicine meets the law. Here, it's where religion meets the law and medicine. We appreciate you guys tuning in. As we mentioned at the start of this, please share, like, comment, subscribe. We're on YouTube and Spotify. We always love engaging with the comments. If you have any suggestions for a future episode, let us know. We would love to hear that. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, This podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.